So this morning's reading is a unique one, and so I'm going to actually invite people to help me read it. We'll do one slide at a time. Anybody do the first slide for me? Okay, thank you. Go ahead. There's a lot of names. I'm so sorry.
An account of the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, and Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, by Tamar and Perez, the father of Hezron, and Hezron the father of Aram, and Aram the father of Amminadab, and Amminadab the father of Nahshon, and Nahshon the father of Salmon, and Salmon the father of Boaz by Rahab, and Boaz the father of Obed by Ruth, and Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David.
Are you read this book? Crushed it. Who's got the second one for us now that you know what you're
And David was the father of Solomon by the wife of Uriah, and Solomon the father of Rehoboam, and Rehoboam the father of Abijah, and Abijah the father of Asaph, and Asaph the father of Jehoshaphat, and Jehoshaphat the father of Joram, and Joram the father of Uzziah, and Uzziah the father of Jotham, and Jotham the father of Ahaz, and Ahaz the father of Hezekiel, and Hezekiel the father of Manasseh, and Manasseh the father of Amos, and Amos the father of Josiah, and Josiah the father of Jeconian, and his brothers, at the time of the
Your head's on
deportation.
You were doing too good, Lord. I
was like, of all the words to get started.
Who wants number 3? I think this one's easier. Okay.
And after the deportation to Babylon, Jeconiah was the father of Salathiel, and Salathiel the father of Zerubbabel, and Zerubbabel the father of Abiud, and Abiud the father of Eliakim, and Eliakim the father of Azor, and Azor the father of Zadok, and Zadok the father of Asham, and Asham the father of Eliud, and Eliud the father of Eliezer, and Eliezer the father of Matham, and Matham the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who is called the Messiah.
Thank you. I'll take the hardest one. So all the generations from Abraham to David are 14 generations, and from David to the deportation to Babylon, 14 generations, and from the deportation to Babylon to the Messiah, 14 generations. Thank you. You didn't realize you were going to be doing that. I could have read that, but you would have fallen asleep by the second slide. So yesterday, had the honor of being present for one of our neighboring Lutheran congregations, Joyful Life in Magnolia. They had a service of holy closure. It was a service in which, after some time, some discernment and dwelling, they made the decision to close as a congregation after 20 years of ministry. And I had never been to one before, and so I really just wanted to be present, take it all in, but also be there to support Pastor Jay, who has become a close friend of mine. And as I sat there and listened to the sermon and the liturgy and the prayers and the ritual, which at one point they returned all of the sacraments, the baptismal font, the Bible, and their the table elements back to God. They returned them back. And then at the very end, listening to the tears and the emotions pouring out as the reality of this finality of this congregation happened. And just incredible to sit there and be with these people and think about their story, think about 20 years of ministry in the Magnolia area. Those who gathered in that place then, but those who sat in chairs weeks and months and years prior, each one making an impact in the lives of people who live in that area. And I went with Pastor Chris, Mark, we both were together on our way back. We were reminiscing about our congregation. It's hard not to be in a space like that and just serve your own congregation. And we're not discerning foreclosure, But we spent time reflecting on our congregation. We started talking about our Sweet 16th birthday party that happened a couple of months ago. And there was a family there who no longer worships at Celebration. And they went up to Pastor Chris and asked, who are all these people? And he told me that it was this realization that our congregation, the way in which we look, the people who gather now, has changed. We started to count how many households are here now that were still there then, but it made me think even further back. In our previous location, does anybody remember we used to have the charter on the wall? And at the bottom were the signatures of all the names of people who were there for that first service, in which we became an organized congregation. And I was just thinking about all of those names on that document, that each one has a story, and that each one has had an impact on this congregation. Think about last week, Jason, after worship today, there will be some artwork out in the breezeway in which you'll be invited to paint it, but the way he framed it was that our brush strokes become our fingerprints on this artwork, that this collection of fingerprints will become the artwork for Christmas Eve. I think about those names, they are the fingerprints that have laid the foundation for who we are today. That these names, but they're not just names, that each person has a story. I think we counted, there's maybe, are there any charter people here today? The 4 or 5 I remember yesterday. Awesome. Well, we've changed. And not that change is a bad thing, I think it's inevitable. Anytime there's a major transition, whether it's a new pastor or a location, which we've had 7 or 8 of in 16 years, the congregation will change. But with that comes new people, and new stories, and new ways in which to be impacted. I think about some of the people that we've encountered along the way who've had an impact on our congregation. Think about our previous location. On one side of the who are you? On one side of the location was our friends from Bethesda, and then on the other side was our kids' activity corner. And when I first got there, I was
Gotta love that kids' corner,
somebody let me know that. Just to give you a heads up, during worship at some point throughout the service, they will make noise. Noise will randomly radiate from that space, just to give you a heads up. They didn't warn me about the other side, in which they were like slamming blocks and playing tag and doing all kinds of things to make noise. And I think about those two sides of the space, two sides in the worship center. And one of the things that's always stuck with me is that for our friends from Bethesda, there was this gentle reminder that for them, it's the way in which they make a joyful noise unto the Lord. That in the midst of a sermon, there might be this, what we might consider a random noise, but for them, it is the way in which they express themselves. A noise in which I miss, and Andrew, I'm so glad you're back, because I love your noise. And then on the other side, in the other space, you have kids who make that kind of noise, and almost immediately you see these heads that turn around and whip at them and give them that death stare. And for us, the attention for the most part stays forward, even though I don't love to be the center of attention. I appreciate it. And so there's this reminder that we've learned ways in which different people make different joyful noise unto the Lord, and to be welcoming of young people. That if we want to be a church that welcomes young families, chaos comes with it, but noise is a sign of life. So these are two ways in which we've been impacted as a congregation. People's fingerprints have been left, their stories have made a mark on us. Another one was, there was a Sunday in particular, Cindy came up to me. There was a little boy who I had never seen. I think it was my first year. She says, he doesn't come to worship here anymore. But I put something on your communion plate, just to give you a heads up, I'll explain it later. And so I go up there, and I take the cloth off for communion, and on the plate is a donut hole. And she later let me know that this kid will only take communion if there is a donut hole. And, I mean, sure, why not? I'm jealous. I wish I could have a donut hole. But in that moment, it reminded me that, and it really taught me, that God shows up more than just bread and wine and grape juice. that God can show up in a total, which actually prepared us for the pandemic, in which I could no longer give you bread or wine or grape juice. And so you were encouraged, if you had it, to do so, but always at the end, the invitation was, and whatever else you might have in your house, to which Laura then lets me know they were using goldfish and orange juice. Which worked because a couple of weeks ago we didn't have bread, so we used blueberry muffins and animal crackers. God can show up in a wide variety of ways. Very good. These names, these people, have stories that leave a legal legacy. The same is true with our families. My dad, about a decade ago or so, started to get obsessed with our family tree and mapping out all of his relatives, which was dangerous because, like, on his side of the family particularly, there's a lot of kids. You have a lot of kids who also have a lot of kids. And I'm starting to get that itch as well, a little bit, but not so much in tracing our history as much as it is. I've got a 2- and a 4-year-old, teaching them about these grandparents and great-grandparents who are no longer alive. My mom died before my wife and I met, and I don't talk about her very often, especially in front of them, to which my wife challenges me because it's really important for them to get to know this person who's not here, but who has had profound impact on my life, who's helped shape me, so made me who I am today. And not just her, but her parents and my dad's parents who are no longer here. These people who have had their fingerprint, their thumbprint all over this world, all over me and the way in which I move in this world. This gospel reading that we encounter this morning, it might seem like just a random hodgepodge of names. And I can assure you it's the only time I've ever used it in worship. I don't think I've ever used it in a Bible study. And when Angela presented me with this reading, I said, we've got to find something else, because even when I encounter this in my own personal reading, I just skip over it. But I think there's value in actually looking at these names, because they offer us a glimpse into the divine history and tapestry of history and hope and promise. It's not merely a catalog of ancestors, it's a narrative, a testament to God's unwavering love and faithfulness to humanity, because each name is a story in itself. The genealogy begins with Abraham, the patriarch of the Jewish faith, a man of unwavering faith who heeded God's call to abandon his homeland and embark on the journey into the unknown. It also begins to trace his descendants. You've got Isaac and Jacob and Judah and David and Solomon, all of these people who are prominent figures in Jewish history. They serve as beacons of faith, inspiring us to emulate their steadfastness in the face of adversity. But they're not without their complexities and challenges. Jacob, for instance, is remembered as being the one who stole his father's inheritance from his brother's Esau, right? He pretended to be his brother so that he could take his inheritance. But it's a reminder that even the most revered figures in our faith tradition are not without their flaws. However, their stories also highlight God's ability to redeem even the most broken and flawed individuals, which I think is the same for our family trees. Some of you may not have to go back so far to find that person that you may not consider to have such a profound impact on you, at least in a positive way. And finding that person who has hurt and harmed you, or for every good reason you've intentionally cut out of your life. And this isn't a plea for you to reconcile, it's more so a reminder that God has the ability to redeem even the most broken and flawed people, even those in our family tree. The genealogy doesn't shy away from acknowledging the imperfections and failings of its subject. There's Tamar, who was treated by the family she's married into was so unjust, she resorted into tricking them in order to survive. There's Rahab, who was cast out by her own people and in return betrayed them. There's Bathsheba, who obliquely is referenced as the wife of Uriah, who survived sexual violence and endured the loss of a child. There's Ruth, who left her home when it became a place of grief and famine and learned to be a part of a whole new religion and people. It's just the name of the women listed in this genealogy. The men each have their own flaws and stories and struggles and scandals. And many other women are also part of that line who aren't afforded the dignity of even being named. Their inclusion underscores a profound truth. God's grace extends beyond our human limitations and imperfections, embracing all of humanity with open arms. This genealogy culminates with the birth of Jesus the Christ, the Son of God, the embodiment of God's ultimate act of love, the fulfillment of the long-awaited promise of salvation. Jesus is the culmination of generations of faith and hope. His arrival into the world marks this pivotal moment in human history, a moment when God's love and grace are tangibly manifested in the form of a human being. His life, ministry, and ultimate sacrifice on the cross embody the essence of God's love, of love that's willing to suffer and die to no longer be in the same accounting business. The genealogy of Jesus is not merely a historical record. It's really an invitation for us to reflect on our own family stories and spiritual journey. Our family histories shape our identities, connecting us to our roots and instilling a sense of belonging. Our ancestors, with all their strengths and weaknesses, have shaped our understanding of the world and our place in it. And so as we embark on this Advent season, I invite you to delve into your own family stories. You maybe don't have to create a family tree, although if you want to, that could be an interesting experience. But dive into your family stories. One of the ways that I learned a lot about our family is my great-grandmother in her 80s and 90s taught me how to play dominoes. And I think she knew I like games, but she liked to tell stories, and she likes to compete, so she'd always beat me. But she'd invite me over for dominoes and share stories of how they used to sell eggs as a living. And so they had this big old chicken farm in the backyard, and there was always snakes, and so I never went inside there. But learn your family stories. Be a witness to the ways in which God has worked through them, and through them now works through you. Take this Advent season to think about your family story, your spiritual journey, and where God is in the midst of it all. Because as we prepare to celebrate the birth of Christ, let us remember we are part of a continuous saga of God's love and faithfulness, a lineage woven with the threads of hope, promise, and redemption. Let us embrace our own stories, our family histories, and spiritual journeys. May the spirit of Advent illuminate your path. May the unwavering love of Christ fill your hearts with joy and peace. Amen.